Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another video. Now, as you can see by this title, this is going to be a bit about control and the fact that I feel like game devs have a tendency to overstep their boundaries. Now, I've been meaning to make a video on this topic for quite some time now, and what this stems from is once again the fact that particularly online games that get, regular updates to keep the game running smoothly, which is a good thing, and we do need the devs to stay on top of that, but an issue can occur when these updates do things that literally no one wants, okay? Now, what I'm talking about here is, once again, control. And the fact that I find that game developers can get just a bit too controlling when it comes to their game at times. Now, I'm sure that some people are already thinking, but TCD, it's their job to improve the game and keep things fresh for us. Which I reply with, yes, you're correct, especially in the case of multiplayer games where players are impacting another player's experience. Devs have to do their best to ensure that everyone is having the best experience possible. But where I'd say they overstep their boundaries is when they get too concerned with balance. Now, I understand that balance is required as it keeps players in PvE, which is player versus player, on fair ground, and in PvP, player versus environment, or player versus AI, however you want to say it, it keeps the challenge factor there. But once again, the issue I have is when devs get the idea that they should and have to decide how players play their game. What do I mean by this? Well, let's take a look at the speedrunning community, for example. It is a speedrunner's goal to beat a game as fast as possible, right? Now, usually they utilize glitches or holes within the levels themselves to skip entire sections of the game. Now, despite the traction and attention that this usually gives the game, when most devs see this, when they see the glitches and the holes in their levels, they try to immediately, somewhere down the line, maybe next month or a week after they see it, and it's, blowing up all over the place, they try to patch it. Now, I asked the question, whose fault is it? Is it the dev's fault for not properly testing the game and extensively searching for exploits, as I feel like it is? Or is it the player who took the time to discover the exploit that was either looked over or never found? I, fall into the category I said before. I feel like that's personally the dev's fault. And we can get a bit involved in the PvP side. For example, let's take a look at the game Dark Souls, the first game. In the first game of Dark Souls, the PvP in that game, there was a technique called dead angling, in which if a player freely aimed their attack, they could possibly hit behind a shield, despite the fact that an opponent was guarding, right? That was actually, if you never know, that's how it was done in medieval times, just saying. But it would do damage regardless of if the opponent is guarding or not, as I just said. Yet, in the newer games and releases, dead angling, and even the remake of the first game, Dark Souls, dead angling was taken out. Now, some could say it was OP or something, which I wouldn't really understand how. And it was literally not game-breaking at all, as it was a technique and a skill at which you actually needed to aim. It wasn't just, you lock on and you hit a button and you hit them. You had to aim behind the shield. Yet this was taken out because the devs just felt like that wasn't how they intended fights to take place, right? Yet in all cases, whether it's speedrunning, using exploits, or even discovering a technique, as I just stated above, that gets past an opponent's defenses, they're removed. They're removed, despite the fact it's not game-breaking, despite the fact that people are relatively enjoying it, and it's giving the game exposure in many different ways, whether it's finding holes in the level to, beat the game at a really fast time in the speedrunning community, or getting past an opponent's defense in Dark Souls, it's removed, despite the fact that an entire community has given the game a lot of attention because of it. And why is that? Because the game devs didn't intend for that to be in the game. Now, once again, I can understand that you want things to be fair and challenging. We certainly don't want to beat your games incredibly easily and just get rid of all the challenge in it. We certainly don't want to just beat a player with a snap of our fingers because of an exploit. Yet, I feel like this idea that game devs have to have complete control of a product that you created to be bought by other people who would shape their experience personally by how they choose to tackle your game is beyond me. I mean, let's just be real for a moment. Like, a game is created and sold to us so that we buy them and play them. Usually, there's a set of choices that we take, whether it's a RPG or a shooter. There's choices that we make on how we can approach situations, what weapons we can use, etc. You give us these so that we can kind of shape our experience, and we can find techniques and tactics that can give us the best experience that we can possibly receive while playing your game. Yet, if we find techniques and tactics that you didn't anticipate, you just want to get rid of them. And I can more understand when it's PvP, as that's, once again, another person, that's another player, so you could be altering that player's experience. But what about in PvE for the most part, right? Like, if I found a way to kill a boss that I feel is much more effective than your way, and it's not like, one-shotting the boss, or I'm killing them in less than a second, and not because, I'm over-leveled or anything, just because I found an exploit. What's the issue there? What's the issue if I found a better strategy for taking down something? I personally don't see the issue. If you've put a boss in front of me, say, what is it called? I believe in Dark Souls, for example. There was a boss. Yeah. Ceaseless Discharge, right? Now, there's certain ways that you could tackle the boss where you could lure him and he would, just place his hand somewhere and you can beat that hand at pause and you could knock him to his death. Or you could engage him in regular combat. Most people would perform the first mentioned tactic. But it's stuff like that. Or some people could even snipe him if they were good. And it's because you didn't anticipate that, you tried to, get rid of that kind of stuff. And I just don't really see the issue there. Because it's not, instant one-shot potential. It's not something that's game-breaking. It's just someone found a safer way or an alternative to go about a situation. Whether it's a boss or even just regular AI in general in games, and you have an issue with that. Or even, in platformers where, they find certain wall jumps and whatnot that they can use to get into areas that you didn't think that they could get into without following the set path that you have for us. I personally just don't see the issue in that. I personally feel like once a dev releases a game, or even an add-on of a game, obviously fix the bugs and whatnot, but I don't think, it should be to a point where, you're just ruining our fun. If I found an alternative to defeat a foe, or find an area besides the path that you've made for me, what's the issue? If in PvP I found a way to, punish someone for being overly defensive or overly aggressive, and it's not game breaking, why do you have to nerf that? Why do you have to make that such a more difficult task for me? Especially when it's not game breaking, as far as I'm concerned. For me, it's this feeling that game devs are trying to give us control but remain in absolute control of their product, which I feel a lot of times now it just stops people from fully enjoying the product, because once they find something that they really like about it, if it doesn't go with like the game dev's agenda, then they'll just get rid of it 9 times out of 10. So as far as I'm concerned, like, it just doesn't feel like a lot of games these days give players the power that like you used to have. Like, you used to really benefit from your choices. You used to be able to shape how you play the game and handle situations, but now game devs are just really trying to filter like how you're supposed to play the game and whatnot, and I personally just do not like that. I don't like that at all. Not one bit. With that being said, that's going to bring this topic to a close. Let me know how you feel about this topic down below. How do you feel about the state that game devs have when it comes to control? Like, do you feel like that's kind of increased over the years, especially now, where it's like mini games are like they're like released in parts and sections, and it's like they just get updates and downloads and whatnot. So do you feel like they're trying to hang on to control even though they sell us a game and we're supposed to be in control at that point? Or do you feel differently? Please do let me know down below. Also, just a quick disclaimer, I want to let you know that since YouTube censors content on its platform, if you want to see these videos, please do subscribe and hit that bell, as it is the only way to receive these videos in your feed. And even then, that doesn't guarantee it at times, because this platform is literally just a dead horse kicking right now, so yeah. As always, rate the video what you think it deserves. Tell me what you would like to see in the future in the comments below. Feel free to check out my amino. It's linked in the comments and the description. And I will see all of you in the next video. Take care.